guys, it's Eddie and today I am back with another movie review for you all. Now today's movie that I'll be reviewing is a horror classic. I have been really excited to get back into the horror movies and recently I rewatched this with my friends and I just had that inkling to review it. So I did and I have my notes with me. So of course the film that I'll be reviewing, in space no one can hear you scream, it's Alien, directed by Ridley Scott and starring Sigourney Weaver, Ian Holm, Harry Dean Stanton, John Hurt, Tom Skerritt and Yaphet Kotto. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I have a track record of not being able to pronounce names on this channel, I'm so sorry. But of course this film follows the mission of the crew of the Nostromo, who venture to a planet where they discover a strange array, or at least John Hurt's character unfortunately does, a strange array of eggs, which produce the famous facehugger, which they bring aboard to the ship, and from then on, havoc ensues. We all know how it goes. We've all seen the chestburster scene. We've all seen the alien, the xenomorph. We're all familiar with it, but I suppose we should probably just get right down to the reviewing of it. This film is admittedly very slow paced, to me anyway. The film is a master of building tension, so much that it almost becomes painful to watch at times. Even when I was rewatching it, I felt very, very uncomfortable at the scenes where the alien was on the loose aboard the ship and the crew were sort of skulking around trying to find it. And you knew something was coming, but it was those clever cutaways to something else, or into another room, or to the cat jumping out instead, that would keep you on your toes to the point that you felt like you were on the edge of a knife, because it was such a precarious position for the crew. And it was just, I love a film that can produce tension in you, where you can feel it in the pit of your stomach, because you know that there's something coming but you don't know when it's coming. And I think Alien is the daddy of this kind of film. The skill that Ridley Scott shows in his direction, in being able to time these moments of tension so perfectly, is masterful to me. And it just really shows why Alien is, deemed such, the classic that it is, because it evokes a reaction in you, and that reaction is very strong. And I kind of forgot before I rewatched it how strong that reaction is, because it is very sort of gut-wrenching and heart-pounding, and you almost feel like you're aboard that ship. The tension is that high, and I think Ridley Scott is incredibly clever at producing and evoking that reaction in the audience. Now, of course, we have an endearing, feisty lead in Ellen Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver. She is kind of just placed for the first half of the film, really, amidst the crew. But then the numbers start waning, and she really emerges as this very strong, very sort of wise female character. And it's sort of always refreshing to return to a character like Ripley at the helm of a horror film in the sort of floundering horror genre of this generation. I just feel like she's one of those characters that is just fantastically strong, and everyone loves Ellen, everyone loves her. And Sigourney Weaver, particularly towards the end of the film when tensions are at their peak, she gives a fantastic performance. Everything that is all of her fear is expressed in her facial expression. Even when it's partially covered by a helmet, you can see like her eyes give it all away. The panic that she feels is perfectly expressed, and sometimes you don't feel like you're watching a film anymore. I think her acting just melds perfectly with the film, and obviously with the situation that she's in. I think it's wonderful acting. And I think these fantastic sort of adrenaline-fueled performances are given by the entirety of the cast, really. It's a fantastic ensemble cast, and you know. I think the sort of chronological change in their attitudes on the ship, and this point where they start to realize that this isn't a joke anymore, lives are at risk, you know, it's all perfectly expressed. The sort of clamoring at the famous chest burster scene is fantastic, and I know that that scene was partially, the reactions were partially real, because apparently they didn't expect, you know, lamb's blood or guts or whatever it was to be sort of strewn across the room and onto them. The poor actors were a little bit shocked, so obviously some of the emotions in that scene are a little bit more real than we would have initially thought. But I think that the entire cast is incredibly well at conveying that utter panic that you would imagine yourself to be in if you were in that situation. Now, I think this film, of course, we can't talk about it without talking about the special effects. The xenomorph, the alien, whatever you want to call it, is one of the most, to me, beautifully crafted villain creature designs in a film ever. I think it's so interesting, it's so cool, it's just an awesome creature. And it is perfectly presented in this film. There is some genius lighting and cinematography to show off the xenomorph in stages. So you know, the close-up shots of its mouth, or, you know, its body in shadow, or, you know, it's sort of confined to the tubing at the back of the pod. It's kind of revealed to you in stages, even with, you know, some, you know, awesome strobe lighting, you know, of the ship. It's sort of presented to you, not totally, but in stages, and it keeps you on your toes about wondering what on earth this creature is. But I think it's genius direction, genius cinematography, and it's really awe-inducing to see this film, and, you know that this is the first time that people got to see this creature, which is so famous now. But I really think that the visual effects are awesome. The costume design, obviously, of the alien is incredible. I just think it's just aesthetically, to me, I think the alien, and obviously like the set design of the Nostromo ship, is wonderful. I just think it's so visually appealing in the film, but also it's terrifying, because the alien is a really terrifying creature that we've seen come back again and again because of its terrifying abilities. And I think it's just perfectly introduced, perfectly shown, perfectly presented in this film. It's just wonderful to watch. It's enough to keep you tantalised throughout the film, and I think that that's what's important for a clever horror, which this film obviously is, obviously with the sci-fi elements mixed in. But there's a reason why this film is a classic, and the sort of incredibly clever direction of Ridley Scott, I think, is a reason why it is, because you can always just go full out and show the creature, you know, in the first half of the film, and then it's just a case of, you know, a cat and mouse game of, you know, it chasing and then popping up whenever it feels like it. But this film makes you feel like you're on the ship, because it doesn't show you the creature in its entirety first off. It's always in shadow, or it's always a close-up, or it's always, you know, you don't really get that full shot of it until closer to the end. And even then, it's not really a full shot. It's either far away or still in shadow. I just think it's incredibly clever at keeping you completely drawn to the film. And those hooks of tension are marvellous. I really love this film. Sometimes my only complaint about this film is that the pacing, particularly at the beginning, does feel painfully slow to me. But admittedly, I suppose I'm just a little bit too eager, likely ruined or spoiled by this generation of horrors, which are far too quick to reveal the monster, or the ghost, or whatever. So for me, that's just me being like, oh my gosh, you know, where is it? Where's the alien? You know, being incredibly eager, which, you know, is just, that's just me. But if you think about this film as a whole, the pacing is perfect. You can't really fault it. So with that being my only complaint that I've just debunked myself. I really don't have anything negative to say about this film. Everyone knows that it's a classic. Everyone knows that it's a staple of, you know, horror and in the horror genre. I mean, it's not, to me, a scary film. I don't walk away from Alien going, you know, where, oh God, is the xenomorph in my house? I'm terrified. I just, while I'm watching it, I'm completely consumed by what's going on and the tension of it. So I don't think it's one of those, you know, stay with you scary films, but the film itself is so beautifully crafted and it's so incredibly paced and directed by the fantastic Ridley Scott that you can't ignore that it is a classic, and I love it. I love it, and I hope you do too. But that is my take on Alien. If I had to give it a rating, I'd probably give it 5 out of 5 stars, with my very, very small complaint that isn't really a complaint, it's just being silly, so might as well ignore that. But yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this review. I am always open to requests. You can suggest a movie for me to review by commenting below or messaging me on my Tumblr, but that is it for now. Hope you've enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you in the next. Bye!